public social data is so important.
It's unsolicited, it's public, it's uncovering people's sometimes terrible desires or, the good side of humanity as well.
The unfair advantage.
Welcome to episode 16 of The Unfair Advantage, Sweet 16. Oh, remember those days when we were young and impressionable and everything in life was beautiful, parents were horrible, and, you just got your way most of the time. Not really. Welcome to The Unfair Advantage 16. Calvin, how are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. Barely over 16 myself, actually.
Like that. Just a little overgrown in the face hair department. Someone else in the room is giving you a little bit of a run for your money. But before we kick in, 16 is a beautiful number. It's from a mathematical perspective. I don't know if you have ever thought about this, but 4 to the power of 2 is 16. 2 to the power of 4 is 16. So it's quite a smart mathematical number that people and mathematicians and smart oaks like to use. And one of my favorite words has 16 letters, which is interventionists. And an interventionist, Calvin, is sitting in the room with us today, and you can introduce him, please.
Amazing. Thanks, Don. Magic numbers. Appreciate that. Kyle Janse, great to have you with us. Kyle is our guest today. He is a researcher at the Center for Analytics and Behavioral Change, or the CABC, which Don and I and our business that have had a long-term relationship with. We've been partners with CABC for many, many years. I'm a big fan of their work. But Kyle, with a legal background, really got into how law, tech, and changing behavior intersect, especially for gender equality, which is one of the key pillars that CABC works on. And he's mainly focused on gender norms and equality through is it called the HeCares ZA project? Yeah?
That's
okay,
the one.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll let you explain it in a bit. But in there, he aims to really get men and boys involved in making positive societal changes. So maybe very quick comments on CABC. As I mentioned, we work closely with them. It's a non-profit organization, and they tackle a whole bunch of really big issues like societal division, prejudice, public health, safety, sustainability, those kind of projects. And they use behavioral science, solid research, social data, which I'm a big fan of as well, which I'm so interested in. And I'm keen to touch on some of that. So, Kyle, welcome to The Unfair Advantage. Good to have you.
Thank you so much, Calvin, and thank you, Don, as well. I just want to start off by saying a better segue will not be found than what Don cooked up. A better segue will not be found. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. Yeah, I like Don's little numerology intros, giving us fun facts for every episode. Maybe before we start getting into it, Carl, was my very brief overview of CABC good enough? Did it do it justice? Anything you want to maybe add that gives us a bit of a clearer picture of what you guys do at the organization?
Yeah, so we are really focused on the thematic areas that you mentioned, and I think what distinguishes the CABC is that we try and hit it from as many angles as possible. So we do the research, we do the on-the-ground work through our dialogue facilitation team, but we also have a media wing where we try and create these campaigns, try and get out in your traditional media, the newer social media platforms as well, and just try and effect change across these thematic areas in all of these different pockets that we are able to. And it's all really backed by the research that we do. And we've, of course, had the pleasure of working with, before, and for several years now. I can remember in the early days of that relationship, we used to come with the tough questions and the team was quite stumped by a few of them, but they always managed to find the solution. And so we built that partnership, and now anything we go to is generally ready for us. So it really has been a really stunning partnership, and we really have gone above and beyond to facilitate this relationship and to help us do what we do best.
Yeah. Yeah, Carl, it's been great. I mean, so for the audience, what CABC has been doing is using a lot of the social data from one of the platforms that we represent in South Africa called Brandwatch, previously called Crimson Hexagon. That's how long this relationship's been going, and we've got a very special interest in how the organization uses that social data to kind of enhance these reports on society. So maybe can you speak to us about that, Carl? How do you guys go about using public social media data for good?
Yeah, I think we really have to start with why that public social data is so important. It gives us an insight, especially the avenues that we research along. I can speak to the gender equality debate in particular here, but it goes to elections, it goes to democracy, your thoughts about political leadership, politics in general. On social media, there's that level of anonymity. This word always gets me. People are anonymous, so they are free to free to say what they feel, free to speak their minds. And what this gives us insight into is those deeper held beliefs within society. And the field that I work in, which is gender equality, we the the harmful gender norms, the patriarchal systems, the patriarchal values are surfaced, and as well as the polarizing debates are surfaced on social media. So we can gather these broad insights across very many demographics within the country, but also in different countries in respect of these debates and conversations. And it's not just to say it's just polarizing or just harmful. We also find the counters to that, and that's also what we try to surface with the public social data on the platform, and that helps us to draft these reports to curate our interventions.
Right, right. I mean, I love that. It's, I mean, to me, it's such a special pot of data to tap into because, like I said, it's unsolicited, it's public, it's uncovering people's sometimes, terrible desires or views, as well as the good side of what of humanity as well. So being able to leverage both of those things, I think, gives you a great picture. So very specifically, I know one of the reasons we set this up was your colleague Kim was telling me about a report that you guys had released this year. I think it's called the Child Predation Report, which got a lot of coverage and attention. Again, using a similar methodology. Speak to me about what that report was all about and why you believe it got the kind of attention it did.
Well, this that report really stems from another report we did last year, which was a gender norms, looking at gender norms in South Africa broadly. And we took it across three lines: masculine, feminine, and LGBTQ queer norms. And from that report surfaced this underlying sentiment from the data that there's something a bit off about relationships and age. Some of the conversations that were surfacing there. And initially we were going to add it to that report, but we thought, no, we're going to pin this and we're going to come back to it and give this the space and time that it needs. And so that developed into the Child Predation Report. And giving it that space and time really benefited that report, because then we could look at the narratives underlying the age gap in relations. And while we did find the more subtle 18-year-old, above the legal age, and a 40-year-old dating, there was some conversation there about, okay, but what's the power dynamic in that relationship? Someone just out of school. Okay, how do we look at it legally? You're in the good books, but morally, do we have questions around that, or how do we tackle that? But then we also found the more sinister opinions. So one of the insights from that report is a saying called "after 12 is lunch." And what that is referring to in particular is that after a girl reaches the age of 12, you can engage in sexual relations with her. and we found a variety of different manners and ways that individuals were saying this exact same statement across the different languages as well. And so that was the first part. That was that narrative analysis. And then the second part was looking at, okay, what's the state of child predation on social media? Do we find underage content, child sexual abuse materials on these platforms, on certain platforms? And we did. And some of it we can't attest to the veracity, but some of it you can see clearly school clothes. Other times it's the fantasization, you know, putting these words and captions in the posts saying that, oh, this is a schoolgirl, oh, this is a teenager. So that was some of the findings from the report, and that was sort of where it stems from. And it was quite bad.
I mean, incredible. I can't imagine having to delve through all of that data and seeing some of the stuff that you've come up with. But I think it's an incredible service to bring that to light and highlight that. So, I mean, are these kind of narratives coordinated, or are they uncoordinated? How is this spreading? Is it a group of people that are almost coordinating this?
That is a tough one, Calvin. I think my honest answer would be yes and no. Yes, in the sense of when we did the second part of this, where we attempted to map that network just based on the data that we can find, bearing, of course, in mind that we can't. Sometimes a picture is just posted without a caption, or a video is just posted, so we can't draw in that data. But based on some of the data that we brought in with our original query, and for the audience, a query is essentially a sponge of keywords that soaks in data. Just probably the easiest way to put it. We found that there are accounts that tag each other, that link to one another, but then there's also it's not uncoordinated in the sense that certain keywords are just used because they know that this will attract the correct audience. So this individual is not particularly part of this network, but they'll use a certain word in their post that will attract the audience of that network to their post. And just to go back as well, I think why this report gained so much traction was because there was a recent case that actually took action against Meta and asked, banned them, told them to remove these child predation sites and groups from their platforms that take active steps in it. But at the same time, we've also been seeing a lot of reports in the news of individuals being caught with 10 million child sexual abuse materials on their hard drives or laptops, as the case may be. So it all really just coalesced into, and it came at the right time. That
Yeah, dude, incredible stuff actually to think about and talk about. I'd love to understand if you're allowed to talk about what some of the next projects are that you have down the pipeline. If you can't, fair enough, but maybe there's something we can keep our ears and eyes open for.
Yeah, so I think our next report is due for release at the end of this week. We'll be looking back at gender norms 1 year later, and that will be a focus on masculine norms. And then within 2026, we're going to go back to feminine norms. We're going to look at LGBTQ, other queer norms as well, and see how the conversation has evolved, see how the insights different, what are we seeing on social media. And just a bit of a spoiler for this report, they are certainly, there's quite a few changes from 1 year later, and a lot of that is positive change, I must say, on social media.
I'm glad to hear it. Carl Janse, thank you so much. Don Packett, any parting thoughts?
Man, this is probably the most sobering conversation we've had, just in terms of some of those insights. And it really is this whole interventionist thing. You know, it was interesting, but also very important. You guys are doing phenomenal work, Kyle. So I'm really glad that we had this opportunity to have you part of this conversation. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen.
Thank you, Kyle. Have a good day.
The unfair advantage.